Hi, this is Ryan, and I just spent 3 weeks returning things. Like, genuinely, 3 weeks of bubble wrap, return labels, arguing with my own printer at 11 p.m., and standing in line at UPS behind a guy who clearly also bought the wrong thing. And here's what I realized sitting in that line. Every single gadget I returned, I bought it because of a number, a spec, something on the listing that sounded incredible and meant absolutely nothing in my actual house, in my actual life. There's this stat that keeps haunting me. Electronics on Amazon have roughly a 15% return rate. That's not a rounding error. That's 1 in 7 people sending something back. And I want to show you exactly why. Because the reasons are so specific, so physical, so completely fixable that once you see them, you can't unsee them. I tested 5 of the most returned gadget categories on Amazon. Not returned by me. Well, okay, 2 of them were returned by me. But I mean categories where the return data is genuinely alarming. And what I found out about one of them actually made me a little angry. We're going to get into all of it, but first, subscribe, because this one's going to save you money. Okay, so let me start with the one that affects the most people. True wireless earbuds. And I know, you've heard this before. Everyone has an opinion on earbuds. But here's the thing nobody actually talks about. And it took me embarrassingly long to figure out. The reason your earbuds sound bad has almost nothing to do with the earbuds. I'm serious. I had a pair, won't name them yet, where the bass was just gone. Like, I could see the frequency response chart online showing healthy low-end response, and I'm sitting there listening to music that sounds like it's coming from a different room. Thin, distant, no weight to it at all. And I spent probably 2 hours convinced the driver was defective before someone told me to try a smaller ear tip.
One size down. That's it. The seal was slightly off, and I was losing somewhere between 15 and 20 decibels of bass, just from that tiny gap between the tip and my ear canal. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between hearing a song and feeling it. And that gap also completely tanks your active noise cancellation, by the way, because ANC works by creating an acoustic seal and then generating an opposing sound wave inside. No seal, no physics, no cancellation. You're just wearing expensive plastic. So the first thing I want you to burn into your brain before you buy any wireless earbuds, any of them, at any price, is that the fit test is the only test that matters out of the box. Not the sound, not the app. Try every tip in the box immediately. Most budget sets give you 3 sizes. Better ones give you 6. If you're at the edge between 2 sizes, go smaller. Always go smaller. And if nothing in the box seals properly, that's a $8 fix with foam tips that honestly, embarrassingly, outperforms what a $100 price jump would do. Now, the other thing about earbuds that makes me genuinely frustrated, and I say this as someone who has read way too many spec sheets, is the Bluetooth codec situation. Because brands are brilliant at making this confusing. You'll see Bluetooth 5.3 on a $28 listing and think that means something good. It means almost nothing on its own. What actually matters is the codec running on top of that connection. And at $28, that codec is almost certainly SBC, which is fine for music, actually. But if you use your earbuds for video, YouTube, Netflix, video calls, anything where audio has to match picture, SBC introduces somewhere between 200 and 270 milliseconds of delay. You will see a person's mouth move and then hear the word. Every time. It's maddening once you notice.
AAC fixes most of this on iPhones. LDAC is the high-end Android option. LA3C is the newer standard, and it's genuinely good, but it requires Bluetooth 5.2 on both the earbuds and your phone. Point being, the version number on the box tells you almost nothing. The codec is what you need to check. And most budget listings just don't mention it, which tells you everything. All right, fitness trackers. This one actually made me a little angry when I dug into this, and I want to be careful about how I say this because it's not about any one brand specifically. It's about a physics problem that the entire budget category has and nobody puts on the box. The sensor in most fitness trackers under $50
uses a green LED to read your heart rate. It shines light into your wrist and measures how much bounces back based on blood flow. That's the basic idea. And here's what they don't tell you. Green light is measurably, physically less accurate on darker skin tones. We're talking Fitzpatrick scale 4, 5, 6. If that means nothing to you, just know it covers a huge percentage of the population. The melanin in the skin absorbs green light differently, and on a single wavelength green LED sensor, that creates errors. Not small errors. SpO2 readings that can be off by 6 to 8%, heart rate that drifts, sleep staging that loses accuracy because the HR data feeding the algorithm is already compromised. The fix exists. Multi-wavelength sensors, red plus infrared plus green, together compensate for this. They're in Garmin's Vivo Smart 5. They're in the Apple Watch. They're in a handful of devices around the $100 mark. They are not in the $25 tracker with the impressive-looking display and the 500 reviews about how the band broke. I didn't know this for years. I just thought the data was a little off and shrugged. That bothers me now.
Smart home devices. Okay, this is where I have to take a breath because this category has caused me more genuine, specific time-wasting frustration than anything else I've tested. And I think the reason is that the failure mode is invisible. Like when an earbud fits wrong, you feel it immediately. When a fitness tracker reads badly, you can compare it to something. But when a smart plug won't set up, you're standing in your kitchen, holding your phone, refreshing an app, completely unable to diagnose whether the device is the problem, your router, your phone, the app, the server, or some combination of all five simultaneously. It's a special kind of helpless. Here's the thing almost nobody tells you before you buy any budget smart home device. The vast majority of them are 2.4 gigahertz only, not dual band, not Wi-Fi 6, just 2.4. And that would be fine. 2.4 is perfectly capable for a smart plug, except that a huge number of modern routers, especially mesh systems like Eero and Google Nest Wi-Fi, broadcast both bands under a single network name, one SSID. Your phone sees it as one network and connects to whatever band the router decides is best, which is usually 5 gigahertz because it's faster. But the smart plug is scanning for 2.4 and it finds the same network name on a frequency it can't use and just fails. No error message that means anything, just fails. The fix is to go into your router settings and create a separate 2.4 gigahertz network with a different name, which is completely reasonable if you know about networking and completely invisible if you don't. And the listing will never tell you this. It'll say, easy setup, works with Alexa, and show a photo of a smiling person and a glowing outlet. The smiling person definitely separated their SSIDs.
Actually, let me add something here because I glossed over it and it matters. There's a second version of this failure that's even more frustrating. Some newer routers default to WPA3 security protocol. It's more secure, genuinely better, but a lot of budget smart home chips were manufactured before WPA3 was common, and they simply don't authenticate against it. So you can have the right frequency, the right network name, the right password, and the device still won't connect because the handshake fails silently. The solution is dropping your router security to WPA2/WPA3 mixed mode. Again, completely fixable, completely undisclosed. And then there's the longer-term thing that I find honestly a little unsettling. A meaningful number of budget smart home brands, and I'm not being dramatic here, there are documented cases from 2022 through 2024 have shut down their cloud servers, just gone. And when that happens, every device that depends on that cloud to function becomes a very expensive non-smart plug. It doesn't matter how well it worked before. The app stops connecting, the automations disappear, and you have a piece of plastic in your wall that does nothing. Casa by TP-Link and Lutron Caseta have been around long enough and are large enough that this risk is genuinely lower. That's not a paid opinion, that's just the math of company survival rates. Buy from brands that have local control fallback. If the device can still function on your local network without phoning home to a server, you're insulated from that failure. Most budget devices can't. Many projectors. All right, I want to be honest about something here before I say anything else. I wanted to love these. The idea of a $90 device projecting a massive image onto any wall in any room is genuinely exciting, and I walked into this testing with real enthusiasm. And then I turned one on in my living room at 2 p.m. with the curtains open, and I watched a $90 investment display something that looked roughly like a PowerPoint slide being shown through a dirty window.
The physics are just brutal. A 100-lumen projector, and a lot of these budget units are 100 lumens or below, regardless of whatever number is printed on the box in a very confident font, needs near total darkness to produce a watchable image. Not dim, not curtains closed dim, blackout. We're talking about a room where you genuinely cannot read a book because ambient light doesn't just compete with the projected image, it washes it out proportionally. Every lumen of light in your room is fighting every lumen coming out of that lens, and your room is winning. The other thing about projectors that I didn't fully appreciate until I tried to use one in a normal apartment, throw distance. Most budget units need somewhere between 8 and 10 feet of distance to project a reasonably sized image. My living room is 11 feet long. By the time I positioned the projector, I had maybe a 60-inch image, and I was sitting basically on top of the thing. It's not usable, but it's not the cinema experience the thumbnail promised. Smart TVs. Okay, this is the one that I saved for last because honestly, it's the one that affects the most money. We're not talking about a $35 tracker or a $60 pair of earbuds. We're talking about a purchase that's going to sit on your wall for the next 5 to 7 years, and you're going to look at it every single day. And the way most people buy a budget smart TV is genuinely painful to watch because the spec that kills them is one that almost never appears in the listing title, almost never shows up in the thumbnail, and costs manufacturers almost nothing to fix. They just don't fix it because it doesn't show up in a comparison chart.
RAM, not the panel, not the resolution, not the HDR certification or the local dimming zones or the refresh rate, which we'll get to because that one has its own whole thing happening. The processor RAM inside the smart TV's system on chip is what determines whether your TV feels like a television or feels like a tablet from 2013 that someone bolted to your wall. Under 2 gigabytes, and you will feel it. Not immediately, maybe, but within 18 months, as Netflix updates, as Disney Plus adds features, as the OS pushes an update that now needs a little more overhead, the lag accumulates. You press the home button and wait. 3 seconds, 4. You switch apps and the previous one hasn't fully closed. You try to search something and the keyboard input is half a beat behind your fingers. It sounds minor until you experience it daily, and then it becomes the thing you think about every time you sit down to watch something. The 240 hertz thing. Okay, I have to say this clearly because it drove me absolutely insane when I figured this out. When a TV listing says 240 motion rate or 240 clear motion or 240 anything, that number is almost certainly not the actual panel refresh rate. The actual panel is probably 60 hertz. What they're doing is running a motion interpolation algorithm, which takes your 60 hertz signal and generates fake in-between frames to simulate smoothness. And then they multiply by 4 and put that number on the box. It's not lying exactly, in the same way that saying your car goes 200 miles per hour downhill with a tailwind isn't exactly lying, but it's also not what you think it means. A genuine 120 hertz panel, where the screen is actually refreshing 120 times per second, is a completely different physical experience. Sports look different, games feel different, fast motion stays sharp instead of smearing, and that actual spec is not the same as the marketing number. You have to dig into the spec sheet and look for native refresh rate specifically. Most budget listings don't include it.
And then there's the thing that happened to me that I genuinely did not anticipate. I bought a budget smart TV. Solid panel, decent brightness, good enough picture, and about 14 months in, I started seeing ads on the home screen. Not from an app I installed, from the OS, baked into the interface. little banner recommendations for movies I didn't ask about, promoted content that was clearly paid placement, sitting there in the menu every single time I turned the TV on, because the TV manufacturer's business model isn't just selling you the TV, it's selling your attention afterward. Some brands are worse than others. Hisense and TCL with Roku OS are relatively restrained about this. Some Android TV implementations are less restrained. It's worth reading reviews specifically for this because it's one of those things that people mention almost as an aside in a 3-star review, and it turns out to be the thing that slowly erodes your entire relationship with the device. So here's where I want to land, because I've thrown a lot at you, and I don't want you to walk away from this feeling like buying anything is a trap. It's not. The stuff that's actually good is really good. The Sony WF-1000 XM5 earbuds are genuinely one of the best things I've put in my ears, and the ANC on a long flight is almost meditative. The Xiaomi Smart Band 10 at $45 does what it says it does with real consistency and lets you export your data. The TCL 5 series with Roku TV has been on my wall for 2 years, and I've never once had to think about it, which is the highest compliment I can give a television. The difference between a great purchase and a return label isn't luck. It's knowing which 3 questions to ask before you hand over the money. Does the fit work for my body? Does the frequency work for my network? Does the chip have enough room to survive its own future? Those aren't exciting questions. They don't make for a great thumbnail, but they are the entire ballgame. If this helped you, and I genuinely hope it did, hit subscribe, because we do this kind of thing regularly. Not the hype version, the real version.